people, you found the Hillbilly Voodoo channel. This here is the start of our self-propelled dumping wheelbarrow. We're going to have to come up with a different name for that because that's kind of a mouthful. This is an old lawn tractor that in the last episode we shortened up the frame and everything about probably 18 to 20 inches. We have flipped the differential around the other way, so now that is the front and this is the back. We're going to be steering with our back wheels, which were the front wheels. Yeah, you guys are going to have to get your head around all this weird stuff, but today we're going to try to create some type of pallet jack steering. In the last episode we mounted a spindle off the front of originally it was off the front of a Hyundai Pony car. We got a little bracket here. We're going to have a piece of metal that comes up like this for a handle. This is going to steer, so somehow we have to connect this steering here to this steering here. The only way I can think of doing that is with some type of bell crank mounted in this position here that steers back and forth with this and then steers back and forth with that. So we're going to go wander around in our piles of ground titanium, see what we can find. I've already found the spindle off of another old lawn tractor that I'm thinking that I can use as some type of bell crank mounted in here. But we also need to find some linkages of some type and maybe a few more pieces of steel that we can build some brackets out of. So let's get at this. Let's go wander around and find some stuff and see what we can build here. Well, I think I kind of got our steering figured out here. I took that spindle off the old lawn tractor, welded it in here, made a bell crank, so the one arm comes off the bottom here, one arm comes off the top. I found the linkage off the lawn tractor also and used the little, they're not really a Hyam joint, but they're not really a ball joint. They're a joint, anyways. So, welded that in there, put a bar across to the original steering that was on the lawn tractor. And you go like that, and it goes that way, you go like that, it goes that way. Yeah, might have to put some stops in there. And still have to tighten up all these nuts, they're just all loose, just to make sure it works. So I'm guessing it's going to kind of work. It's like pallet jack steering, so when you turn the arms like this, the wheels go like that, and you follow the arc that the machine is going with. Instead of if you turned it this way and you wanted to turn that way, you'd be not following the arc. So I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. Anybody that's ever driven a forklift or a pallet jack, it probably makes sense too. And anybody else, well, maybe you're, well, you probably had a little red wagon when you were a kid, or you knew somebody that did. That's pretty much the same idea as that. So, yeah. Now I need to make a pivot or a bushing for in here. That's this width that I can put a pin through. And we'll have this piece of steel down there like that with the bushing welded to the bottom of that. So that's like that. And we can adjust our steering back and forth like that. And it will stay up like that. So you can also steer straight up and down. It's kind of the idea that I have in my head. I don't know if it's going to quite work yet, but I'll go find some type of material that I can stick in the lathe and bore a 1/2 inch hole through it. That's that length. And we'll try out our pivot pallet jack steering type idea. All this stuff is going to get trimmed up and rounded off and not pokey and yeah, more, well, try to clean up the fool to tool interface here so that I don't end up snagging myself on everything, and it's a little more, maybe less body damaging. yeah, so let's go find a piece of metal anyways and quit yapping here. I found us a big old chunk of rebar here. We're gonna bore a hole through the end of it. And, well, we'll stick it in the lathe, bore a hole through the end of it. Clean all the bumpies up off of it here so it doesn't look like we're some ghetto hillbilly building stuff out of rebar. Well, which is exactly what we are, some ghetto hillbilly building stuff out of rebar. Anyways, we're gonna stick it in there. We'll clean it all up. Poke a hole through it. That should be a pretty good pivot. It's fairly thick. I think it's bigger around than my thumb, so it's better than 1 inch. Yep, let's stuff her in the lathe and see what we can make out of it. We got our little rebar bushing thing made there and in between our two brackets. Couldn't tell it was a piece of rebar unless somebody told you it was a piece of rebar. So I've notched our bar here, or handle, or whatever we're going to call this. That's going to be welded like that. Our bushing. Yeah, so let's weld that together and see if it's going to do its thing. We got all our steering put together here now. It does its thing. But you know, I was sitting here last night. Yes, this is the next day. And I'm looking at this and you know, it's crap. I was trying to simplify everything. I was just trying to use what was there and make it simple, but it's dumb. It's just, it works, but I can guarantee it's going to break. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 linkages, or 6 ball joint, IM joints, whatever you want to call them, and we got a pivot here, and it works, but I'm still not getting the amount of steering that I was hoping for to make it really maneuverable. And I think that's probably what's wrong with the world today, is we just keep making things more complicated to simplify them. It just, yeah, I don't know if that's how you guys end up working. You make things more complicated to simplify them, but this is crap. I don't like it. So I think I'm going to get rid of all this stuff and start over again. Go with the single rear wheel that I was going to originally go with here and figure out how to make it, well, simplify it for one thing, because this is way too many moving parts and I can guarantee that something's going to break. And once it breaks, I really don't want to fix it. So yeah, let's stop whining. Let's get rid of all this junk and let's start over again. Now I got all that junk ripped off the back here and I'm feeling a lot better about the whole situation. So that's a good thing. I don't know why I even bothered with that, but hey, it is what it is. I have this wheel. It's the same size as those wheels. For some reason, it has no hub in the center. I obviously cut it out for something else that I don't really remember why, but it was sitting in the shop here, so it's not all rusty and crusty, and thinking that that's where it's gonna go. I was gonna use one of the little tires, but we have a lot of rocks around here and uneven ground, so bigger tires on uneven ground and rocks. And if I want to go to a smaller tire, I can always go to a smaller tire. If I build it for the big tire, then I can always put a smaller tire on. But if I build it for the small tire, then it'd be hard to put the big tire on. But yeah, that kind of makes sense. So let's start out with the big tire. Obviously, we're going to have to put a center in this rim. So what I'm thinking is I have two of those spindles that I used for the steering. I used the one on the steering. So I'll use the other spindle and build the hub center of this rim that matches that other spindle. So I can use the spindle for the go aroundy part, and I'll use the other spindle for the steering part. Yeah, that sounds like an idea. So what am I going to need here? I'm going to need some pieces of steel that come off of the frame like this. Probably going to have to come off, go up, and then come like this so that I can put the steering spindle here. Yeah, like that. And then I'm going to need something go from the steering spindle down and around, or down and around the side like that, and into the wheel hub spindle. Does that make sense? I guess that kind of makes sense. Just do like that. Yeah. So let's go wander around in the ground obtainium and see what we can find for some metal that'll come off of here, go up like that, and like this. Yeah. I found these pieces of square stock here. They were already welded together in a 45-degree angle. I think they might have been off of some old weight bench equipment of some type, and they seem to fit in there good. They seem to be the right height. This piece was the original part that I made for the spindle to mount on for the other steering setup that we had. So I tacked that in there. That kind of actually looks like this hillbilly brain fart is going to work here. So I'll build something to come off of here and down for the spindle to mount to. And that should simplify our whole steering arrangement and back end of this machine. And simpler is always better. Makes it a lot easier to fix when I do break it. What am I going to need now? Well, I have this piece that we used for our handle. I think I'm going to keep this piece in one, but I do have some more of this stock, so I will take some of this type of stock and build our little, I don't know what we call it. It's not really a swing arm, it's just I guess kind of a mono fork, like on a Cannondale. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Anyways, let's build that. Go see if we do still have any more of this stuff. And if not, then we'll have to find something else. Kind of looks like it might be a good thickness. Maybe not, but actually I do think I have some of this that's a little bit thinner too. So maybe that'll work. Anyways, we'll go wander around, see what we can come up with for material to build this mono fork thingy out of. Now this is what I've ended up coming up with for our little arm to hold our wheel thing here. Got our one spindle there. I used the bracket that I had made before for the other steering system that was not doing what I wanted it to. This is obviously going to have to be braced and gusseted and everything, because I can see it folding up like a cheap lawn chair right about there. So we'll put some more material in here and kind of brace that, and maybe put some more gussets in this area here. But it kind of looks like it's gonna do what I want it to, or it should, I hope. I think the next order of business is to put a center in this wheel, so that then I can decide where I need to mount the other spindle on that down part thing there. So we'll look around. I think I got some metal that I could use, a small piece that I can cut out to kind of fabricate a new center for that rim, but I'll go take a look and see what I can find. Kind of looks like this bucket here is damn near the perfect size for the center of this rim. So I will take that bucket outside with me, wander around and see if I can find a piece of steel that's just slightly bigger around than that bucket. And we can trace it out, cut it out, and maybe stick it in the lathe and make it a little more round. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. By some weird freaky deaky fluke here, I found a piece of steel that was already sort of almost cut out in a circle. That is almost sort of the right size. Yeah, kind of. So I'm gonna cut this piece off of here and find the center of this circle, weld a piece of pipe on here and stick it in the lathe and true it up, and hopefully it will be the right size to drop in here after I true it up. Yeah, that's kind of a fluke, but yeah, that was a door, if I remember correctly, off of a really old metal cutting bandsaw. Yeah, ground obtainium. You never quite know where it comes from, but that might do the trick, so let's find out. Now I got our piece of steel mounted up here in the lathe. I found center of it and marked a hole that we're gonna have to make for the hub, the center part of where our hub is gonna bolt on to go through. So we'll cut that hole out. Well, first we're gonna drill a bigger hole and we're gonna machine it out to there. Then we'll mount this piece of steel onto the lathe chuck through the center of that hole, and we can turn the outside edge round. Now we don't have a whole lot of meat here. I'm hoping that where I've got this line marked here is the right spot. Like I said, we don't have much meat to turn down on the outside here, for it's too small, so hopefully this piece of metal will work. I actually found two pieces of this metal that were pretty much identical. I must have cut them out in mirror image for something else and never used it. So if we totally screw this one up, then we got another one that we can work with. But it is, again, the same, exactly the same mirror image, so there's not much meat on the outside here to deal with. So let's auger a hole through this thing and see if we can make what we need to make out of this piece of steel. Otherwise, we're going to have to go find something bigger. Well, we got her turned down there. Now let's hope that it's, well, it is just about perfect. Maybe 1/8 of an inch. Wow, that's good.
I figured that we wouldn't have enough meat to actually make something out of that, but looks like we lucked out. So I'm going to take this now. I'm going to stick it on our hub. So we'll do it like this. Stick it on our hub like that. Trace out the bolt holes and drill them out before we weld this hub in here, or the center in here. Got those marked out. We should be able to drill them out on the drill press now. Should make it a little bit easier. Poke some holes in here and then we'll weld it in. So we got our holes poked in our wheel flange here so that we can bolt it up to that. Now what I'm thinking is, I've chopped off all the crap that was on the back side of this spindle and hub configuration. Now I think I'm going to disassemble it, put the spindle in the lathe, and machine this surface perfectly flat so that when we put it back together, we can bolt that together like that, put a piece of steel across here like that, drop it down in the hole, and that will give us the distance that we need from here. It will center this in the right spot for us to be able to tack it in, weld it in, and then our arm can come up like that. Does that kind of sort of make sense? I think that makes sense. So let's disassemble this and machine it down flat, and we'll try that out, see if it works anyways. If it does, it will give us a nice square edge anyways, and it'll give us the right offset of the wheel. Yeah, because if you put it like that, obviously going to have it up a little bit higher, so why not weld it into the place that we need it? Yeah, let's go with that. I got the center of our wheel all welded in there now. I just ended up bolting that center to the hub, laying it down on the floor like that, and tacking it in and then welding it up. I was going to put a piece of steel and blah blah, but this is just much simpler and it's straight now. So I did want to put extra material on the inside of here because this is fairly thin tubing, so I can put a chunk of flat bar up about that far to space the wheel away from here. So that's a good thing. So now I can put our wheel like that. And it gives me an idea of where the ride height needs to be. And I can mark it. And chop her off right there. Like I said, I'm going to build a spacer here so that it spaces it out again away from that thing, puts it right in the center, and then I can make that spacer longer so it's more meaty and that stuff won't fold up. So I'll chop that off, see what I can do for a spacer, and bring you guys back when we got it all somewhat assembled and maybe down on the ground and ready to roll. We got our wheel all assembled here. I think we're back to the state that we were function-wise before we tore it all apart. Steering back and forth. Wheel goes round and round. Much easier to turn. I got a heck of a lot more steering angle. This thing could probably spin itself around in its own circle. And it seems to be a lot simpler, so hopefully that if it does break, I'll be able to repair it simply. All of this stuff is obviously going to have to be gusseted up and stiffened up and whatnot because it's just a thin piece of plate. And I added extra meat into here, added some extra meat into here, so this should all be nice and nice and secure. But like I say, all this has got to be gusseted up here. I think that I'll have a hoop going like this with the controls on it of some sort. I'm kind of coming to the point looking at it here where I'm thinking, why am I going to be walking? Why not just put a seat on here? And I can always plop my butt down on it and roll around. Maybe I'll make it removable, so because this is obviously being built for my wife, so if she doesn't want the seat on there, she can take the seat off, and if I use it, then I'll put the seat on because I really don't like walking. So yeah, I think we're at the point of this video where it's getting a little long, so we'll leave it here, and next time we'll maybe work on the box or gusseting this stuff up. So until next time, use what you got to make what you want. I'll see you guys later.